So we've been hearing quite a bit about this idea of wealth tax and how it may be the answer to the lagging UK economy. But how realistic is that really? And more to the point, can it actually fix the broken British economy?
What is more worrying is that now he's flirting with Neil Kinnock's demand for a wealth tax. Let's be honest about what that means.
So to begin with, what is a wealth tax in the first place? Because quite frankly, we already pay a million other taxes. We have employment tax, business tax, inheritance tax, capital gains tax, and not to mention the countless forms of indirect taxes that the people of this country have to pay. So what really is this wealth tax now? Well, to put it short, it's a flat tax on your net wealth. So basically everything you own, from your home, your savings, your pensions, your stocks, and every other form of asset that you may have. Now, generally, it's meant to reduce inequality and raise revenues for the government by taxing everything you own above a specific threshold, and it's charged on an annual basis. Unlike capital gains tax, for example, which you pay only when you sell an asset for profit. And yes, there is still a talk of one-off wealth tax, which is obviously not out of question, and there's still this idea being thrown around to impose a one-off surprise wealth tax so that anyone that falls into that bracket will have to pay without being able to proactively plan to tackle it. And by the way, this actually seems like the only effective way to impose wealth tax in the UK, because otherwise, if people saw it coming, they will find out ways to essentially avoid paying it or pay very little. Because if there is one thing that we know about the richer rich, it's that they are very good at hiding their riches. Anyways, so now one question that needs to be answered is why is this trending now? Why has the wealth tax become such a hot topic recently? Well, we all are aware about the UK's economy, which is pretty much like a very leaky bathtub. We borrowed and spent a lot, so that is huge, roughly 96% of the GDP. The OBR has warned that the UK's debt is one of the highest in the world. So you're sixth highest in debt, fifth highest in deficit, and third highest borrowing cost among advanced countries. Basically meaning that the government owes a lot of money, and the most convenient way to raise the money to pay off debts and to fund the public services is to levy more taxes. And meanwhile, while the government is piling up debts to fund public services, the rich in this country have gotten richer. So, according to Oxfam's research, UK billionaires added £11 billion to their wealth in just 1 year. And the fun fact is that that's the exact amount the government cut from aids and benefits of ordinary British people. So there's quite a lot of frustration around the fact that the rich are prospering more than ever, while the middle class is being pulled down into poverty. A recent poll shows that about 78% of public would rather tax the very richest than slash any of the public service, which obviously makes total sense. And another poll suggests that 78% of public would back a 2% wealth tax on anything above £10 million. And we've seen that this pressure has been mounting on the Labour government as people demand fairness and justice in the tax system. And Prime Minister has mentioned on several occasions that those with the broadest shoulders should bear most weight, signaling that a wealth tax may be just around the corner. Now, the most important question is that if it is to go through, which is seeming more and more likely, who is going to pay it? Well, the short answer to that is mostly the rich, if it is done properly. So there's a suggestion to apply a 2% flat rate tax on everything above £10 million. And if this is implemented, then it would hit only a tiny fraction of people, which is about 20,000 in whole of UK. But it could raise roughly £24 billion a year, according to a recent article in Sky News. But some other estimates are not very generous, and it is estimated to raise around 11 billion per annum only. Now, one major issue that critics of wealth tax are warning against is that the threshold of wealth tax is going to be lowered basically every year, eventually dragging the very middle class into it. So Sasha from Sasha Takes on UK posted a very good video on this, pointing at this exact concern. And although there is this risk of the threshold being reduced, my argument is that it is not going to be so subtle that the government would easily get away with it. Because at the end of the day, the purpose of wealth tax is to tax the wealthy. And if the threshold is lowered to a point where middle class gets pulled in, then I think the government would face severe backlash from the public and the opposition. So I really doubt that anyone in the government would be stupid enough to actually consider doing this. Now, moving on, let's look at how historically wealth tax has performed in some other countries to understand the pros and cons. Because although there are the positive outcomes of wealth tax, but there are some serious downsides as well, which are very important for us to consider. So, at the moment, Norway, Spain, and Switzerland have a wealth tax system in place, and there's a mixed view of whether this has been of a benefit or net loss to these countries. But there's one thing for certain, that the wealth tax does lead to a mass exodus of wealthy people, which is quite evident in the case of Norway when 80 ultra wealthy left the country, who, by the way, were collectively worth over 40 billion pounds. And a similar thing happened in Spain when a slight increase in wealth tax led to about 12,000 millionaires fleeing the country. So one thing is obvious, which is that there will be a mass exodus of millionaires if the wealth tax is imposed here in the UK. And although some prominent voices in this space, such as Gary, which you may know from Gary's Economics YouTube channel, argue that the wealthy cannot simply move out of the UK because they got their assets here and we can still tax them, which is a fair point. But there's one thing that people often forget, that the UK is a service-based economy, and many of the wealthy business owners who have a service-based business can quite easily move offshore. So if they can move their business out of the UK, they can certainly de-invest from their investments in this country and take that money elsewhere with them. But that's the thing, because you win some, you lose some. You cannot keep everyone happy all the time. And the state in which the economy is in right now, unfortunately, someone has to bear the burden, and it cannot be the working class anymore, because the standards of living of the working people have already been pushed down so much in this country that they barely have any more room to breathe. Personally, I say we all want a fairer system. And it would feel fairer if the ultra-rich chipped in a bit more to ease off the economic pressure that is mostly felt by the lower and the middle class. But at the same time, looking at this from an accountant's perspective who has worked with these wealthy clients, I do feel worried that if a significant number of these business owners decide to move their businesses offshore, what impact would that have on the job market and the UK economy in the long run? So let me know your thoughts and opinions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.